I don't know what surprised me most this morning. This article from Republic, brilliant, or the fact I now strongly believe, 98% of me believes, that Richard Eden is following this channel. I've taken his username off this comment, but this comment here ties in with the stories that he's been publishing for the last 2 days about where Harry's money came from. And it's still Harry's money that he's chosen to give away, by the point. Just a spoiler for the royals out there. Taking away his username, this was posted weeks ago. I think this is Richard Eden. And Richard, if you watch this channel, welcome, round of applause to you. We try and be positive and give fairly balanced coverage on this channel. Obviously, we are very, very unhappy with the state of the current non-working taxpayer-funded royal family and the continuous scandal they get themselves into and the absolute shame they bring on the UK. Even yesterday and the day before at Ascot, obscene amounts of money to keep these people in the lifestyle that they believe they deserve while we have children growing up in poverty. Back to the main article. The public are speaking. 45%, less than half. It's time for change in 2026 and 2027.
You know what's really interesting about this whole monarchy conversation? For the first time in a long time, people aren't just nodding along anymore. They're asking questions. Simple questions, the kind of questions that make powerful institutions nervous. And honestly, that's probably why some folks are sweating right now. Because for years, the monarchy operated like that old family business nobody was allowed to question. Why do we do it this way? Because we've always done it this way. End of discussion. But younger people today hear that answer and immediately go, okay, but why? That's the problem. Not a scandal, not a headline, not a poll. The problem is that people have started asking follow-up questions. And once that starts, good luck putting the toothpaste back in the tube. Let's be honest, a lot of younger people are looking at this institution the same way they look at an old app that hasn't updated in 20 years. They're sitting there wondering, wait, we're still doing this? And before anybody gets mad, that's not hate, that's curiosity. There's a difference. The world has changed. People want receipts. People want explanations. People want to know who benefits, who pays, and how the whole thing works. That's not being rebellious. That's being a customer in 2026. Nobody just accepts the terms and conditions anymore, not even on Netflix. So why would they blindly accept them anywhere else? That's the part some royal commentators seem to miss. You can't keep telling people respect tradition. People hear that and respond, cool, explain it. And if the explanation isn't convincing, they're moving on, fast. The old strategy was simple. Wave from a balcony, attend a ceremony, smile for a camera, and everybody claps. But today's audience is different. They've got Google, they've got social media, they've got access to information 24 hours a day. Good luck telling them not to ask questions. That's like telling a cat not to knock stuff off a table. It's happening. Now, does this mean the monarchy disappears tomorrow? Of course not. But it does mean something important. The automatic support isn't automatic anymore. And that's a huge shift. Because no institution survives forever on nostalgia alone. At some point, people stop asking what something used to mean. They start asking what it means right now. And if enough people can't answer that question, well, that's when the real trouble starts. Not with protests, not with headlines, not with social media arguments, with indifference. Because institutions can survive criticism. What they struggle to survive is when people simply stop caring. And judging by these numbers, that's the question hanging in the air right now. Not whether people are angry, whether they're interested. And for any institution, that's a much bigger problem. You know what the public is really saying right now? Interesting timing. That's it. That's the conversation. Because when an institution spends years saying, don't worry about it, just trust us, and then suddenly starts talking about transparency the moment people start asking tough questions, folks are naturally going to raise an eyebrow. Actually, make that both eyebrows. People aren't stupid. They've seen this movie before. It's like that friend who refuses to show you their phone for 5 years, then suddenly hands it over after deleting half the messages. You're sitting there thinking, well, thanks, I guess, but why now? That's where the skepticism comes from. Not because people hate transparency, people love transparency. The problem is the timing. When openness shows up only after public confidence starts sliding downhill, it doesn't feel like a gift, it feels like damage control. And regular people can smell damage control from a mile away. We've all worked for that company. You know the one. Management ignores complaints for years, then the staff starts leaving. Suddenly, there's a pizza party, a motivational speech, and a survey asking for feedback. Everybody's sitting there eating pepperoni thinking, where was this energy 6 months ago? That's kind of what this looks like. The world has changed. People fact-check everything now. They compare stories. They screenshot receipts. They pull up old interviews faster than a Formula One pit crew changing tires. The days of because we said so are over, finished, done, expired. People want answers. And when those answers arrive late, they don't automatically earn applause. They earn questions. Lots of questions. Because trust works a lot like a phone battery. You can spend years draining it. You can't charge it back to 100% in 5 minutes. That's not how life works. That's not how relationships work. And that's definitely not how public confidence works. So when people hear announcements about greater openness, many aren't saying, wow, amazing. They're saying, okay, what changed? And honestly, that's a fair question, because trust isn't built with press releases, it isn't built with fancy speeches, it isn't built with carefully staged photo opportunities. It's built over time, slowly, painfully, one action at a time. And right now, a lot of people are looking at these sudden changes the same way they'd look at a restaurant that finally cleans the kitchen after getting a bad review. Sure, cleaning the kitchen is good. Nobody's arguing with that. The question is why it took so long. That's the conversation people are having. Not anger, not outrage, just suspicion. And once suspicion moves into the neighborhood, it doesn't pack its bags and leave overnight. And judging by these numbers, it's probably the feeling shared by many younger Britons. Let's talk about Harry and Meghan for a second. Harry and Meghan leaving the royal setup did something the whole system really didn't want happening. It made people look inside, and once that door cracked open, there was no closing it again. Before that, it was all polished surfaces and perfect angles, waves from balconies, carefully timed smiles, the whole nothing to see here, carry on routine. But then they stepped out, and suddenly the story got messy in a very human way. Because people weren't just hearing they left, they were asking, wait, why would anyone walk away from that? All that money, all that status, all that history. You don't just leave that unless something deeper is going on. And that's where things shifted. The conversation stopped being fairy tale and started sounding like real life. Workplace pressure, family tension, feeling boxed in, not being heard. Regular people understood that instantly, because that's not palace-specific drama, that's Tuesday for a lot of folks. And once Harry and Meghan spoke up in their own way, it didn't feel like gossip anymore, it felt like someone finally opening a window in a room everyone assumed was perfect. Fresh air came in, and so did questions, lots of them. People started comparing notes, their own jobs, their own families, their own we're fine, everything's fine situations that are clearly not fine. That's the part that changed everything, because once people start relating royal life to their own lived experience, the mystique takes a hit, and when mystique drops, control over the story gets shaky. Harry and Meghan didn't just walk away from an institution, they accidentally showed the world that stepping away was even an option in the first place. That's the real shift. Not scandal, not headlines, choice. And choice is powerful in a way that makes old systems uncomfortable. Now the public isn't just watching from a distance anymore. They're comparing, questioning, side-eyeing the polished version versus what they think might be going on behind it. And honestly, a lot of people ended up relating more to Harry and Meghan than the institution they left behind, because walking away from something that looks perfect on paper but doesn't feel right in real life, people get that. So now the old narrative doesn't land as easily, not because people are being difficult, but because they've seen there's another side to the story, and once you've seen that, you don't unsee it. For years, the monarchy had one main skill: keeping the story tight. Nice photos, clean headlines, big ceremonies, everything looking smooth, like nothing ever goes wrong and nobody ever argues behind the scenes. Basically, move along, everything is fine. But that only works when people aren't able to compare notes. And now everybody's comparing notes. That's the problem, because we're not in the old era anymore where one official story hits the news and everyone just nods along like, all right, that must be it. Now people see one version from the palace, then another version from leaks, reports, interviews, and insiders. And they start doing mental math. Wait, this doesn't add up. Hold on, that contradicts what was said yesterday. Hang on, who's actually telling the truth here? That's where trust starts to crack, not from one big explosion, from little inconsistencies stacking up like bills you ignored too long. And the public, they're not sitting quietly in the corner anymore. They've got phones, they've got timelines, they've got screenshots saved from 5 years ago just waiting to be pulled out. Like, remember this. So when the official version doesn't match what people are seeing or hearing elsewhere, the polished image starts losing its grip. And honestly, this is where Harry and Meghan changed the game without even trying to play the game, because their exit made people pause and go, wait, there's another side to this? And once that question enters the chat, it doesn't leave. What used to feel like a sealed, untouchable system now feels more like something people can actually examine piece by piece. And here's the street-level truth. Regular people don't care about perfect branding. They care about consistency. They care about things making sense. They care about not being told one thing while something else is happening behind the curtain. And when those two worlds don't match, people don't automatically blame themselves anymore. They question the system. That's the shift. Not rebellion, not chaos, just people paying attention. And once people start paying attention properly, the old method, carefully staged moments and tightly controlled messaging, doesn't hit the same way anymore, because that attention like that doesn't go back in the box. And that's the real challenge now. Not controlling the story, but dealing with the fact that the audience finally learned they can question it.